With a draw shot, you hit the cue ball below center to create bottom spin, which pulls the cue ball back after hitting the object ball. Many beginners and some intermediate players often have trouble executing draw shots well and consistently. This video looks at the draw shot in detail. We'll cover technique advice, physics effects, and shot examples. Let's start with some elements of technique that are important in executing a draw shot. First of all, with any shot, especially when hitting the cue ball off center, it is important to chalk the tip properly. Chalk provides friction between the tip and cue ball and helps prevent miscues. Here's a good way to chalk the tip. Use a swiping motion across the tip as you rotate the cue. When you're done, there should be a uniform layer of chalk across the entire tip surface. To get good draw action, you must hit low on the cue ball. For maximum draw, the tip contact point can be half the ball radius away from the center. Beyond this, a miscue is likely. A striped ball can be useful to help visualize the miscue limit. With most ball sets, the stripe width is very close to half the ball's diameter, so the tip contact point can be as low as the edge of the stripe. With this ball, the stripe is a little wider than normal, so aiming the center of the cue at the edge of the stripe is close to the limit. When the cue is elevated, if the stripe is tilted in line with the cue, it still shows the limit for draw. Many people think you need to elevate the cue to get draw, but this is not the case. You want to keep the cue as level as possible on most shots. When you elevate, some of the cue ball spin is lost because the cue ball is driven down into the table. Also, when the cue is elevated, it can be more difficult to keep the cue ball along the line of the shot. If you hit the cue ball even a small amount off center, it will curve offline slightly. Remember, keep the cue as level as possible. Now, sometimes you need to elevate the cue, for example to clear over an obstacle ball. In this case, you still should not elevate the cue more than you need to. You also need to be careful to not use too much speed because the cue ball will jump with an elevated cue. And if the cue ball hits the object ball while airborne, it will bounce forward and not draw back as much. With less speed, you get less hop and the cue ball can draw back more easily. Another case where you have to elevate is when the cue ball is close to a cushion. Here's a 9-ball example where we have to draw back off the 7-ball to get a shot at the 8. The bridge length from your bridge hand to the cue ball should generally be 8 to 12 inches, and you should use close to the full length during the stroke for smooth acceleration. If you use only part of the bridge length, you need to accelerate the cue more quickly, which can be more difficult and less accurate. Again, use the full bridge length and accelerate smoothly. For shots requiring more power, it's generally better to use a slightly longer bridge. Here's an example where we need enough speed to provide and retain enough backspin on the way to the object ball to draw the cue ball back up table for a shot at the 8. For a softer touch shot, a shorter bridge is more appropriate. Probably the most important technique advice is to keep your grip relaxed during the entire stroke. If you tighten the grip during the stroke by mistake, the back of the cue will tend to come up, causing the tip to go down. This generally results in a scoop shot where the cue ball launches into the air. Some people recommend a closed bridge for draw shots because it can provide good control. However, as long as you don't have stroke flaws that cause you to lift the cue up, an open bridge is just as good. It is very important to keep your elbow still during the stroke into the ball. If your elbow drops, the tip will hit the cue ball higher than you expect and you'll get less or no draw. And if your elbow rises, the tip will hit lower, probably causing a scoop shot. Some people will naturally drop their elbow during the follow-through, and this is fine as long as the elbow doesn't drop early. Many people will be more consistent with draw by keeping the elbow still during the entire stroke. This is called a pendulum stroke. Whatever you do, make sure the elbow is still during the stroke into the ball. On all shots, especially draw shots, you should bring the cue back slowly and accelerate smoothly into the ball. Here it is in slow motion. Slow backswing and smooth acceleration into the ball. It's much more difficult to maintain control with a fast and jerky motion. Remember, go back slowly and accelerate forward smoothly. Also, allow your cue to follow through and stay down on the shot. Stay down in the finish position until there is a need to move.